You're listening to the Autism Weekly podcast.
Each week, we share community voices and bring light to stories that increase awareness, acceptance, equity, access, and inclusion. If you haven't already, subscribe to join the Autism Weekly family. I'm your host, Jeff Skibitsky. This week, we're joined by Maisies Soetantyo, the co-founder and director of the CATCH Clinic. That's CATCH. Maisies has been working with neurodivergent children, teens, and adults for over 30 years. Her passion for supporting her clients' authenticity as autistic individuals led to her mission to create a training curriculum for neurodivergent individuals of all ages with emphasis on strength-based and person-centered approach. In this episode, we'll be discussing the importance of autistic employment, the challenges and opportunities that come with navigating the transition to adulthood, and strategies for creating inclusive workplaces. Maisies also brings unique perspective as a late diagnosed autistic individual and professional coach. Maisies, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Jeffrey.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And to be honest, this is a topic that I think needs to be talked about a little bit more, is that the services for autistics have centered around early intervention and maybe into adolescence. And sometimes we forget about the adult population and about really that transition to empowering individual accessibility to the community. But before we get there, I always want to just touch base and know a little bit about you and what brought you to the field of autism in general. Do you mind sharing that?
Sure. I really enjoy working with people, especially with kids. So as an undergraduate at UCLA, I wanted to specialize. My background was in psychology, but I wanted to specialize in developmental disability. That's what it was called then. So then I got to explore working with kids or with adults, and I just happened to be placed in an autism classroom in Los Angeles somewhere, working with, it was a preschool. So I just fell in love with these neurodivergent kids, and many of those kids, actually, they were connected with the UCLA's Young Autism Project. So that's just how I got into the field as a behaviorist and worked my way up to the top. And then I left to get trained and certified in a relationship-based model. So at CATCH Clinic, we only work with parents, and we support parents to figure out the best way to help their neurodivergent kids live their best lives. So I watch my clients grew up, and many of them managed to get a college degree, and they can't even get a summer job at a place like Domino's because they can't compete with neurotypical job seekers. So in 2019, I created the nonprofit Autism Career Pathways, and I really want to show the world that meaningful employment for people, neurodivergent people who want and can work, looks very different. It has to be highly individualized. And I love designing curriculum. That's what I got my master's in. So now I just develop curriculum and courses to help figure this part out. The employment challenge for neurodivergent adults, especially for those very marginalized and for people who communicate very differently. So this is like my specific passion and what we try to accomplish through the nonprofit.
Well, I appreciate the efforts that you're putting into this, because you used a word that I think that we all need to key in on, and that's meaningful. Is that historically employment for those that have been marginalized and have been seen as not having the skill set, despite probably having not only the skill sets to do the job, but unique skill sets to add extra components to the workforce. Those things haven't been meaningful historically. It's been, oh, let's find a job that's more rote. Let's find a job that's more factory based. So can you give me just an idea of, what meaningful means to you, because I think that we all have a different understanding of it, but I'd love
Yeah.
to hear from you what that means in the employment world.
Well, I think having a meaningful work or having quality of life as a neurodivergent person and as a neurotypical person also, it just means that you live your life as your authentic self. So, and I think it doesn't happen overnight. It really needs to be nurtured from childhood, so caregivers, they love, like parents love their children like no one else, right? Because it's your child. But the understanding that my child is who he, she, they are, and I respect that identity, that priorities, and passion, all of that. So that's meaningful if you can access, that you can access and you have a voice, whether you are in need of help or you can show other people things that you enjoy doing, like everything would come together because it's been nurtured and respected and cultivated since you're a young person. And that's you. That's you, and your package, it's different than that makes you unique, and that's meaningful employment and quality of life, how you live your life, how you do your leisure activities, how you think about work, and how you contribute to your community.
Would it be wrong of me to assume that part of where we might have missed historically in our society is that we are telling neurodivergent individuals what they need to do, where they need to work, how they need to behave in the community, where what we've missed out on is understanding, what it is that individual is seeking, how they're approaching things maybe differently, but getting to the same or better results. What's the curriculum that you're developing? What does that start with? How do you start working through it? Does it start with, figuring out what it is that's important to me? Does it hit on interview skills? Does it hit on teaching the workplace how to intervene?
Well, that's a very, very good question. And it's so important, I think, because a problem, I think this is a human problem. If you are not familiar with something or somebody or who someone is, or a field or knowledge, and it becomes uncomfortable and it makes you feel, well, I don't know anything about that, about autism or ADHD or, non-speaking neurodivergence. So I'm not going to even talk about it, advocate for it, and we forget that we are all human beings. At any age, we're all human beings. And when we try to put an autistic person or neurodivergent young person into boxes, because when we categorize people, that it makes it easier to provide or design programs or to find support, but actually we have to do the opposite, right? We have to unbox them so that we don't, otherwise the world is missing out. If we only think about a person and what that person does through one lens, which is your own lens. If you're a neurotypical, that's your lens, and neurodivergent lens is very different. And I always tell parents I work with, also professionals, that autistic people have a different developmental trajectory. The way we develop language is very different. So if you're a speech therapist, you're using a training and you're creating goals based on neurotypical children. that's very different. It doesn't even cross,
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so that's the issue, right? So we don't have the right kind of handbook to work with neurodivergent people. Things are starting to change today because we have so many neurodivergent advocates out with books, with online resources. So I think this is a very important time. So, okay, I'm realizing I'm rambling and I've forgotten your actual questions.
No,
So,
and
answer
I
your
think
question.
yeah, I think that you hit on what the gestalt of what we're trying to kind of encompass there
Right.
is, and
Right.
it almost is like, as you're talking, I'm thinking like there's three very distinct paths here. There's, how does the community become more aware to be able
Mhm.
to support and welcome autistics and neurodivergent into the
Yeah.
workplace? There's, how does the stakeholder community, that could be the treatment, the
Okay.
advocates, how do they support the individual? And then the individual themselves, what can they do? So let's start with the workplace. What is it that creates a workplace in general that is supportive of having a variety of people excelling in the office
Yeah.
space or excelling in the work?
Right. Well, I parents, therapists, teachers, job coaches, I call them, all of us actually here we are adult guides. We are in the position to be able to support someone neurodivergent, business owners as well, coworkers, and so on, right? And I think we have to always presume competence. Secondly, we have to have the right mindset to be able to include and help someone neurodivergent to belong. Accountability, be accountable, and everyone has internal biases, and you have to know what they are and undo them, right? So it doesn't have anything to do with your education level or how many years you have worked with autistic people and so on. But I think it's very dangerous to say, I've always done it this way and it has worked before, and when you're young and you're starting into this field as a professional, a lot of times you get stuck. And I also know a lot of people who have decades of training and experiences, and they're very successful, but they've also been hiding under the wrong rock, thinking that, well, this works. No, it doesn't work, because we're raising human beings, and that means we have to see our clients, our students, coworkers, neurodivergent coworkers' potential before they see it. That's what
Mm-hmm.
my mom did with me and my families, and I grew up with learning disabilities. So school stopped. I still don't know how I managed to graduate at UCLA and went back to school years later to get my master's degree. But if you are autistic with hidden disabilities, going to school is really hard. Social interactions
Mm-hmm.
are really hard, and in the old days, diagnosis was not possible. There were no IEPs and so on. So, and yet, I think a lot of parents and teachers, therapists, they're very intuitive because it
Mm-hmm.
is their calling, it is their passion. Like me, I'm still doing, working with autistic people after these many years, because that's really my passion. But you have to learn from the people you serve. It doesn't matter who you are as an adult guide, right? If you're a coworker, or maybe you work with the DDIB, you run the DDIB at a large corporate company, it's really on you to be a role model, to show the way, to learn from neurodivergent people directly. And you have to put together a group. So my other advice is don't do it alone.
Yeah.
Do it together and be accountable and identify what kind of inclusive culture you want at work, and keep moving towards that, because then that's how we go from just talking about it to walking the talk, right? So a lot of companies, they don't feel comfortable to openly say, oh, we want to hire an autistic designer, an autistic system analyst, and so on, right? Because they don't know that word autism or neurodivergent. It's still, there's a lot of negative representation attached to it, right? We are not a charity case. That's the other thing we have to change. The adjustments, accommodations have to go both ways, right? And this is how, if companies are serious about it, they can go from just talking about it every April, hiring an autistic person to do presentation, company-wide presentation, to really having the right mindset. And then that's how you go from intention. The intention has to be there. And then that's how you go from intention to impact, right? So you have to really work on it. It's hard for now because, but anyways.
It is really hard. But that intention to impact, that to me seems to be the biggest barrier. There's a lot of people who have a wonderful intent. They want to be able to be successful and being able to broaden the workplace to bring diverse minds into every decision-making process and into empowering and strengthening their own business. But what they're missing sometimes are the skills to get there, is that learning how to be able to adapt to somebody's communication style, their learning style. Those are tough skills. So how do you go about helping to be able to work with employers or work with advocates to be able to say, this is the first step. This is how you teach people to be able to start developing these skills.
Yeah, so this is actually what we've done through our nonprofit, Autism Career Pathways. We do online courses. So it's usually a hybrid model where you have self-paced recordings to understand neurodiversity 101, and, what is autism? What is not autism, for example, and giving people a much more affirming set of vocabularies when they describe and think about neurodivergent people. So I'm a curriculum designer, so my mind works in bullet points. This is the kind of training offerings that we provide for companies, so we can train their leaders, we can train educators, because it's same but different. The overview of neurodiversity has to be created by neurodivergent people, and that's what we've done. We have presentations and recordings, and all of our classes are always run by neurodivergent people. So I think that's really important to have, or to collaborate, or to hire organizations that can give you that basic understanding to move away from a fixed deficit or pathology model into a more proactive collaboration-based model, like how to interview autistic people differently. So we include all that into the modules, and through ACP, Autism Career Pathways, we also want to do business-to-business networking, so businesses and companies can come together and learn from each other. I think to make meaningful changes, we shouldn't compete with each other or keep reinventing the wheel. We need to collaborate, because it's such a massive problem, really. So that's I think important to find an organization like ours that have this curriculum designed by neurodivergent people. So it's neurodivergent or autistic centered, right? And where all the modules really help you to first understand, to change your mindset, and also give you the tools to be able to communicate, to problem solve, to collaborate with autistic people. That kind of curriculum, that kind of how-to, that's a problem. There's not no how-tos that actually work. And I think the intention also for me as a curriculum designer, as an inclusivity trainer, is not to spell it out for people. That's important. We can't tell people how to change if they're not yet ready to change. But to be inclusive, best inclusive practices, that looks different from business to business, company to business, company to company, because every company has a different culture. So, that's going from the basic to more customized and personalized kind of training. I think that should be a very important keep in mind, whether it's training for teachers, training for parents, because we're all human beings.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And just the pathway that you're going through that, it's different. Is that when you look at the history of being able to do job coaching and things, it's focused on how do you make the autistic individual more palatable to the employer. This flips the script. It puts the responsibility maybe back onto the community at large to understand that, some of those things that we typically look at, and let's stick with interviewing, whether that is being able to clarify a message in a very articulate, succinct manner, or whether that is the eye contact piece, or whether that's those little things in an interview that maybe employers are historically looking for that neurotypical response, and they're missing out on the candidate pool because of those little things when you're interacting. So what are some of those components that you'd say, as a business owner, these are the things that an autistic individual that you're missing out on could have brought to your company, that would have strengthened your company, that have made you a better organization, and ultimately as a business probably helped your profits in the long term by doing these things?
Yeah, so let's talk about just on the subject of interview or the job screening process, right? And I'll also answer this in two different ways. One is from the autistic or neurodivergent job seekers perspective, and also from the businesses and companies and the interviewers, right? So I think the problem is because we don't have the right kind of manual right now. So autistic people and neurotypical people, it's like some people use an iPhone, some people use a Samsung Droid phone. You need the right kind of manual to be able to best operate your device, right? That's the easiest way you can think about it. And remember, autistic people have a different developmental trajectory. We have our own culture. We speak our own language and so on. So I think that there are a lot of misunderstandings and unwritten rules from both sides that make the screening part difficult. So if for people who work with autistic adults, the problem is if all these years these job seeker was being trained or has been trained to mask, to respond to others' questions, in a very deficit way, question, answer, or if you're in this situation, this is what you do, blah, blah, blah. Reward-based programs, for example, right? You're training this autistic person to become someone else. And that's really not possible because our minds are different, right? So when you're like training autistic people to behave more like neurotypicals, that's where the world is missing out, because then you have this 23-year-old who has college degrees but can't answer simple questions like, tell me what you love doing when you have like on weekends, you know, because these people are used to their compass is not themselves and what's important to them. Their compass is what is the person in front of me want me to say. There's always that in the back of their minds, right? So that's a big issue, actually, because you can be really brilliant, but if you don't have support accommodation at work, eventually you're going to experience sensory burnout, sensory meltdown, because that's just part of being a neurodivergent living in this world today, right? It's going to come, right? And that's where we have so many brilliant neurodivergent people who just keeps getting fired, starting over at the bottom. So they're underemployed and underpaid, right? So over 85% of autistic college graduates are not working. That's, to me, it's like not acceptable, right?
That makes sense.
So yeah. So then the other side of it, companies and business owners, co-workers, you know, for them, when they hear the word ADHD, autistic, dyslexic, dyscalculia, I have those, but I still consider myself smart and very capable. The moment you hear these labels is to actually become very curious, because it means that you have to think outside of the box to do the screening part, right? And at the end of the day, if you're part of a large corporate company and you're a recruiter, you want to hire the best person for that position, neurodivergent or not, right? So I think it serves the company better if they learn more about how to best interview ADHD people, how to best interview someone like me who is very sensitive to noise, loud noises, brightness, and so on, because those things do affect me and it really distracts me. You know, those are little things. And of course, you've heard about universal design for learning, UDL, and, you know, I add universal design for communication. It's good for everyone. You know, movement break is good for everyone. Slowing down during breakdowns is good for everyone. Giving multi-sensory modality accessibility, access to support during your meetings. You know, even Zoom, you can turn on the caption and so on, right? It's the same thing. You always have that mindset. What else can I do so that I'm not missing out on this person, right? So I am the one who has to take time. An example of this would be one of our board advisor is a non-speaking autistic person, right? And the moment I decided I need to have non-speaking, minimally speaking people as part of our team, the moment I make that as our goal, I reserve time to do that. So it took us a long time, a lot of back and forth, because I don't want to speak for the person. You know, I gave a selection of duties and roles, and I let that person choose. Right? Yeah. So that's exactly what I meant by it starts with a mindset, and you invest in time, and then you do it. You do it together with the person. You do it together with the person. That's how you make sure you're not missing out on anything both ways, right?
Yeah.
Clear communication is great for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So this is where there's that misunderstanding that, hiring neurodivergent people is really, it's a charity case, or it's gonna cost us a lot of time to do this. No, because hopefully you do it your own way, become inclusive, and that's what every time you hire a new person, that person goes through that training. Yes, I'm doing
and I've seen that.
Yeah, exactly.
I've seen that before. I mean, I've seen it where, when you broaden the workplace and you're patient to really understand each individual and what they're trying to be able to share with you and what they're bringing to the organization, and help them to be their best selves, is that the entire organization benefits. It might be time up front to understand how, as a leader of an organization or a manager, how do I adjust my style to empower somebody? But it does have such an impact on the overall culture of an organization. So you've done so much work on being able to kind of bring in the community, get engagement, bring autistics into the decision-making process to inform the neurotypical community on, hey, these are the things that are important to us. This is what's going to help me. This is where it's going to go. Where can they reach out to, or where can they access even your materials to be able to start this process? Because a lot of organizations are hesitant to do it because they don't even know where to go. So how do they start this process?
They can go to our website, autismcareerpathways.org. And we're launching our new platform. And the way I envision this platform is it will contain a lot of video resources. So at the click of a button, you can learn about neurodiversity 101 and autistic experiences at workplaces and so on, right? And then if they're ready to take the next step, then they work with us to do the training, the hybrid training, online resources. And then we come in to answer questions and also help them personalize their screening process, right? So they feel comfortable saying, we want to hire neurodivergent people. And it shows on the website, it shows like on their policy document, it's everywhere. When you're being affirming, right? So learning how to be affirming, it takes time to put it together because your company culture is very unique. So the way ACP think about this, yes, we provide some standardized modules for businesses, but I think it's important also to be present for them and develop that relationship with the company, because again, dealing with human beings, it has to be highly customized and personalized. And I have to empower businesses that we work with because they're partner to us, right? We want them to just keep doing this on their own and teach other businesses, show other similar businesses to do it. This is how, at least in my head, that's how ideally that should happen, because it's not like, hire Maisie to talk about autistic and neurotypical communication at workplaces, and that's it, done. There has to be the next step, like what will be like the next action items after a presentation, and it needs to continue right within the company. So I think hopefully,
and that success, I would imagine, spreads over time. I mean, you see one business do it, you're like, hold on, that worked. It worked for them. They were able to do it successfully, and it created a wonderful work condition, working culture, everything. I should be doing this. And it's kind of like that trickle down. Do the families have the same resources? Because I know that for me as an individual, doing things and being on my own without any support is extremely hard. Are there the same resources for families to support?
Absolutely. So I advocate through my Instagram accounts. I run 4 Instagram accounts. It's just the way I just need those categories to help me stay on task. So the parenting account where I advocate for autistic children, it's just my name, at Maisies Soetantyo. And of course, for Autism Career Pathways, we have at Autism Career Pathways, and I interview autistic people of all ages to talk about their specialized interests and their career journeys. So it's very safe and fun. And we also have non-speaking autistic business owners. So I think last week I just interviewed Fidget Pockets. So that whole family communicates through AAC and sign language, which is really beautiful. And it was really funny, these AAC users. But the interview, those kind of interview, I hope if a parent sees that, they will feel more hopeful to be able to look ahead a little bit, right? I also run at Better Community Certified, at Better Community Certified, which is a sensory inclusive certification for our community businesses. So if they are willing to learn how to be more neurodivergent friendly, that's the training and the certification for them. So it's very popular with bookstores because autistic people love going to bookstores. So it's all there. And our YouTube channel also has a ton of videos, some videos for parents and presentations by autistic people, certified businesses. It's all there as well if people want to see, regardless of who they are, whether you're a parent or a professional or a teacher.
Well, I appreciate it. And those resources are invaluable. But Maisie, thank you so much. Your passion, your energy, your knowledge, your commitment to hearing the voices of those that you're helping to advocate for. It's something that it's commendable. And I appreciate you coming on to share your story with us. And hopefully we get to talk more as this goes on, because, you know, the more the message spreads, the more we're going to start seeing the workplace community broaden and strengthen over time. And this is just the first step. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to Autism Weekly. We hope you tune back in next week to learn more about autism in the real world. Autism Weekly is now found on all the major listening apps, including Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Amazon Music, and more. Subscribe to be notified when we post a new podcast. Autism Weekly is produced by ABS Kids. ABS Kids is proud to provide diagnostic assessments and ABA therapy to children with developmental delays like Autism Spectrum Disorder. You can learn more about ABS Kids and the Autism Weekly podcast by visiting abskids.com. Thanks for tuning in. See you again next week.